Hello everyone and welcome to a new painting tutorial. Today we are going to paint this girl with watercolors and color pencils, and at first of course we will start with watercolors. I'm going to be using the Humoribi watercolor palette. You can't see it right now, but I will tell you the color names that I'm using. I'm going to spray the palette with my pump spray just to wet it a bit, and then we can start. So at first I'm going to wet, I think, the entire area of the painting, firstly with water. So we have light areas on the face, but they are not completely white, so I will just try to leave them out, but if they might be tinted a little bit, I think that's no problem. Okay, so I'm going to put the water here, and I think I'm going to use the greenish gray metallic green is this. And the reference photo is very like muted, it has muted colors, and I think that's very beautiful, and I will try to stay in this color range. So I will also use a lint-free cotton towel, because I will probably have to correct a little bit here and there. Using a tiny bit of black as well. And I think for the rest I'm going to use just metallic silver. So just pure silver from the palette, and I will just wet the area here. At first you really don't see much, so this is intentional. I want to be careful in the beginning. I want to be too strong with the colors in the beginning, because I don't know how the painting will look. So I have this reference photo, but I still have no plan about how the abstractions might look, or because you can't really control it. They flow in every direction, and then it's really nicer to be surprised and work with what you get. So if I get a nice abstract form, I will just work with that and don't try to change it like my expectations. This way, I get way more satisfying artworks if I don't have a huge expectation and the abstractions don't look like I wanted them. So I'm just playing with the white colors. I'm working with the Polina Bright brushes, so here we'll be a little bit careful so that it doesn't bleed. Too far into the face area. This is a Polina Bright brush number 3, but it doesn't really matter what kind of brushes you use. It is important that they have a very thin tip, and the tip is not very round and how do you say it? Some watercolor brushes are not so good. So the tip is, even though it looks thin, you are not able to make a thin line. So avoid those kinds of brushes. For me, for example, the Trykel watercolor brushes don't work at all. The all paint brushes are great, but the watercolor brushes, I don't like them. So I wouldn't recommend these kind of brushes. But all the I also work with a lot of cheaper brands and just dollar store brushes, and that worked for me too. And of course they are not that amazing like from the quality, so they don't last long. Okay, so here I'm just adding a little bit of brown. This is just brown, basically. So color is called brown, very original. And the lower part of this portrait, like the whole neck area, is very dark. So I will just darken this complete area. Being careful here in this area. Okay, so just use, I think it's indigo blue. No, it's gray. Yeah, I think it's Payne's gray. I can't really read the color names because my swatch paper is completely messed up. It's a Payne's gray. Just filling this area here in. And here you can be completely creative, so you don't have to follow the steps that I do. Just fill those areas like you think it looks best. You can be completely colorful, you can use all the colors you like. I'm not super good at finding the best color schemes, so whenever I paint maybe from a photograph like this one, I try to stay in a very muted color range. For me it's easier, but you do what you like the most, so don't have to stay with the like gray colors here. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry, and I'm just going to wipe the paint off here, because it went into the eye area. Fortunately, and here as well, but fortunately that's no problem. These areas are darker, so yeah, that's not a big deal. Okay, I will use my hairdryer to just keep everything set. Okay, so I just realized that the complete water went below my tape here, so this is great. I don't know why that happened. Normally that doesn't happen. Maybe I used too much water, but that's really weird, so normally that doesn't happen. However, that's no problem. We will still make a nice watercolor painting. Okay, now let's continue with the face. For this, I think I will go with the Betty Hayways brush. I just want to try them out. I will mix a little bit of red ochre and yellow ochre. And then just fill in the sides first, the sides of the face first. I think like this tint is like so light that I should be able to fill in everything, even the very light areas. I think I will leave the forehead white, but here around the eyes I will fill in everything, and maybe here even on the cheekbones. I think the only area that is, or the lightest area of this portrait is the forehead. And the highlight on the nose, so I will let that white, and maybe here this little area on top of her lips, like this one. So I'm going to fill in the right side of the face as well. Just need a little bit more paint again, just the same paint. And with the Fabriano paper, you can layer watercolor very easily. Not every paper brand allows that, so you're gonna have papers where you just can't layer anything, everything will get reactivated again. So if you, oh, and I need to fill out this area here too, because this is shadow apparently. Like if the technique doesn't work for you, then it can be either the watercolor paper or the watercolor. Mostly it is the paper, but if you work with known brands like, for example, Winsor & Newton, or even this here Komoribi watercolor, then it's the paper. But I also had a case where it was the paint, so I'm just try it out. Sometimes you have to change up your materials and see if the techniques you maybe see other artists doing are working better for you then. Okay, so I'm going to mix olive green into this. This is the brown is just sienna. I'm going to mix in olive green. And I will fill in the neck area, and I also go over the chin, because her chin is this area is in shadows, so we'll just fill this complete area with this darker tone. I'm also just adding a little bit of the blue. And just filling in the borders here of the face. In order to make a gradient, I will just carefully go along the edge here with a wet brush. I'm just using the same brush, cleaning it a little bit, just going over the border and just making it a bit darker. And here I will mix in a little bit of crimson, because here her cheek is a little bit blushed, like that, and the same on the left side. The borders of the face are all a little bit darker, obviously, because here we have more shadows. So I will always start at the borders and then work myself up to the center, like the smaller or like lighter midtones and lighter colored variations. But first I will add the darker, because they are very prominent and dark as well, even darker than the shadows along the face. A good watercolor brush, for example like this one, holds a lot of water, but it also has a fine tip, so I can fill in this large area, but I can also, for example, draw fine lines here for the eyebrows. This dark shadow here on the left eye, obviously too, and it goes up to the eyebrow. Here again for the eyebrow, I'm just painting it with the tip of the brush. And then we have a very dark but very thin line almost here for the lower eyelid, and the same on the right side too. And I think the model has a rose or pink eyeshadow, so I'm going to add a little bit of crimson to my paint, just carefully adding that. To the paint here. Okay, so then we have very dark shadow completely here on the nose tip. I'm just adding a little bit of what is it? Carmine, just to give it a little bit of a pink tone. Like that. And now let's continue with the beautiful lips, and for that I will use crimson, just this very intense crimson and carmine, and I will just fill in those very beautiful lips here with this intense pink tone. Here I need to be very careful to not mess up the outlines and the shape of the lips. That looks good, and then I will leave parts of the lower lip white, because here we have highlights and I don't want to go over them. So like that. I think that looks accurate roughly, and yeah, I will just let that dry. And here we have a little shadow here, and I will continue with the eyes. So I'm just using the Payne's gray that I have previously mixed, and I will fill in the irises. So we don't have light reflexes in the eyes, but I will just make them up. I think that will just make the portrait a little bit more, like maybe the look of the model a little bit more intense. So I'm just making the eye reflexes up, the light reflexes. Okay, now I have to be careful to make the irises the same size. And here we have a shadow, so a shadow on the eyeball and the lash line, so it's basically merged together. Okay, so unfortunately my paint bled into the surrounding paint, but it's no problem because we're going to paint or draw over it with color pencils. So I hope the paint is dry on the right side. So I will just carefully draw in the lash line here. Okay, let's continue with filling in her eyes. I would use the small brush for that. Okay, I'm just using the Payne's Gray and a little bit of green, just peak green. So this is an intense cold green tone. And because you can see on the reference photo that the white is very greenish, at least on my print. So I printed this one out, and of course it does look different on the laptop. So if you, for example, use the same reference photo, it might have a completely different tint on your laptop or your device, whatever you use. So if you see, if you look at the reference photo and you see, okay, this isn't green at all, it's orange, for example, or it's just gray, then you have just a little bit different colors than I have, and this is like true for everyone. So each device looks a little bit different. Okay, so I am going to switch to this brush here, just the slightly larger one. I will mix this burnt umber and a bit of the Payne's Gray. And just fill in this dark shadow that she has below her lips. Here at the edges it is a little bit lighter, and I will also make the border a little bit smoother, not so super sharp. Then I will take the same, just a little bit more of the Payne's Gray green mix, and then I go over the nose area again, because the whole area actually is darker. We have a little bit of light contours around the nose tip and a little bit around the nostril, so I think I try to leave them in the lighter tone, but it's difficult to be that precise with watercolors. Okay, now where the eye area is dried, it is very light and it needs to be like a lot darker. I will leave the eyelid light, and I only go over the shadow area here. And here at the border, I will try to make a blending, and I will use this crimson color. And I will just, because this area is wet and I want it to blend, so I'm just drawing this watery paint just down along the face, just adding a little bit more of the shadow color, because when the watercolor dries it loses like 80% of its like darkness or intensity, so you have to go over areas again and again until you really reach the color values of the reference photo. So I'm adding in a little bit of red ochre. adding a contour to the left side of the face. And also the neck area needs to be a lot darker, so I'm just adding Payne's gray and olive green for the neck area. And here I'm just making those like more or less abstract forms and movements with the brush. It doesn't have to be realistic here. I just want to fill in the rest of the painting. So okay, and now let's proceed with the lips. They should be dry by now. Here I'm just using deep black and Payne's gray again, and I will be very careful to fill in like the gap between the lips. So this is not easy. I don't want to like make it too large because you can't really get black off the paint of the paper once it is like it went into the paper. It's hard to correct that, at least with the Fabriano paper. Okay, so I'm going to use the carmine to make a blending with the black. Transition to the upper lip. And I'm using the carmine again, and also just add a shadow to the lower lip area. And here I'm just using the darker paint and just add the fold of the eyelid, because this is very dark, just here on the left and on the right eye. Like that. And we also need the nostrils, so I'm just using the same dark paint. And here you have to be careful to not use too much water, but because the darker you want to get, the less water you need to use. Okay, so it's a little bit hard to guess where the nostrils go because I cannot see my Anna drawing anymore, so I have to guess somewhere here. Okay, so we also need the lash line to be dark. I'll just use the same dark tone here for the lash line. Okay, like that, I would say. Then, yeah, I think I will first dry everything with my hairdryer. Let's add another layer on the cheeks. And I will use this brownish like mixed tone that I already have on my palette with a little bit of the carmine and the cerise color, so that I have a little bit of the blush. And here for the area around the mouth, I will add in a bit of the Payne's Gray, just to give it a little bit of a blue tint. Well, you can't really see that. Yeah, it's not that red anymore. So like that. And here, just adding a bit of neon blue. No, I think ultramarine blue is better. The neon blue has this awful green color to it. So just a little bit of blue. I like that just to spice up the skin tones a bit, and adding like blues and greens and reds. It's never wrong, I feel. So the whole right side of the face is darker, a little bit darker than the left one. So I'm just going to fill that in real quick. We also have a very subtle shadow here on the nose. It's very subtle, so I need to be careful. And in between the eyes, there is a shadow too. It's only in between the eyes, and it doesn't go down a lot. And also the shadow that we added here in the eye sockets, maybe, it's not dark enough, so I will just add a little bit of black and umber and just random dark brown tones that I find on my palette, and also a little bit of the Payne's Gray, and then I will just go over this area again and just hopefully now make it darker. Okay, don't want it to bleed into the space between the eyes, that would be bad. So you need to be careful. Maybe just a tiny bit of brown. Okay, let's hope for the best. So I'm going to use this pink here, and I will go over parts of the waterline of the eye, because it only has a couple of highlights and it is not completely white. So the white here, you can't find that on the reference. So I will go over it. What was this? Where does that come from? Weird. So it only has, for example, here it's pretty dark actually. And then we have like a tiny highlight here in the like edge of the eye, like that. And I feel like how, if you notice it, how the brown bled into the shadow between the eyes. This looks good, so I will let it like that. For the nose though, this is wet nose, so I will just wait until this is dried. I think the whole shadow looks a little bit muddy. I will see if I can do something with my wet brush, but I feel it's already sunken into the paper. I can maybe add a little bit of orange, just to make it look not that muddy, and then I can go over it with color pencils. Yeah, so for the ear here, we don't want to forget that too. I'm just going to make it a bit darker. That's it. And on the right side too. Okay, let's switch to color pencils now. And I'm going to start off just with black. And at first I'm going to really correct the shapes of the irises. Just make sure that they look approximately even. And then I will go over the lash line. And just intensify those areas that are very dark. Here, for example, we have the iris and the shadow directly above the pupil, and on the right side we have the same. So I don't want the eyes to be uneven. I feel the right eye looks a little bit larger than the left one. So I'm just going to draw the lash line a bit down here, like that. And then I'm just intensifying the lash lines. Like that. Okay. Since I'm having black in my hand, I'm also going to draw in the nostrils here. So just want to make them even too. Okay, so there's also a shadow in the fold of the eyelid, so I will also draw that in too. And here we also need a light, like a highlight, and I think I will try this pencil here. So this is a luminance pencil, burnt ochre 50%, and I will just try and see if this is the right color for the highlight. It's a little bit dark, so I will also go over it with white. Okay, I need to... Oh, fortunately I have the new white. I thought that this was my last piece of white. This wouldn't be great. Okay, so I'm just going over the watercolor, and here you can see how well the white really covers. Okay, let's continue with filling in details in the eye section. So I set up the drawing on a on a packaging, so that it is not flat on the table, because firstly it's really bad for my back, and also I can't really see all the details. I have to be super close on the paper, and then you won't see anything. So I find it way easier this way. So at first I will carefully add a little bit of shadow around the eyes. In those circular movements, just carefully. I don't want to go over the entire watercolor effect, because it already looks very beautiful. So I will just make it very carefully. And then just sharpen the pencil a little bit more. And then I will try to make a very fine and clean line between the eyeball and the waterline. And here in the corner of the eye, the line is a little bit more visible. I know it's like a super small detail, but I feel that really helps with the realism. And here the corner of the eyeball is a little bit darker, and also in this brownish tone, so the pencil color is the perfect fit. And the same on the right side too, just filling out the corner. And here again, the corner of the eye. I'm going to switch to another color, maybe a blue tone. So I'm going to use this blue tone here. This is ultramarine, just from Polychromos. And I will just fill in the eyeball here, just make it a bit darker. And I will also darken the contour of the iris. Like that. I think that is okay. Then I will just go back to the ultramarine and just draw a line here between the waterline and the eyeball on the other side too. And then I think I will take the white and just go over the waterline, and here, like where it is very light, I feel it needs to be a bit darker. So I will first go over it with the darker luminance pencil, and then I will go over it with the white luminance pencil. And this way we get a really nice blend between the two pigments, and it looks more natural. Here on the left I can just paint directly with the white luminance pencil, like this. And so I'm switching back to this gray color. This is warm gray number 3 apparently. Like this. Okay, I'm not sure if it will hold. might crack. And I will just go over the white of the eye. And let's try with the primrose. This is a yellowish white. I think this should be good for the eyeball color. I like to focus on the eyes and the nose and a little bit on the mouth, and everything else in the face I try to paint with watercolors. You can of course draw over each area of the face, but I like to have those focal points, and normally that's pretty much, I think, all, like everything the face needs in most cases. Okay, so now I'm just going with the magenta color here, and I think that's too intense, so I'll try burnt sienna. This is also a thing that I do all the time, just switching the color pencils back and forth and just compare with the reference photo what fits best. So I'm not sure all the time what colors fit better. I'm just trying things out along the way. So here is the shadow, like beneath the waterline. I will just carefully darken this area. I don't want it to be too extreme. And here the eyelid is a little bit crooked, so I'm just going over that with the white. And then I think I will try this violet. I think that looks nice. Okay, it isn't on the reference photo, but I think it really fits well to the motif. So, and what I'm doing is I just go over the color pencils here, the pigment, to just smooth it out. And then for the shadow here, it needs to be smoother still. So I will just switch to the luminance pencil and just go over this area. Here you can just take, so this one is called ochre brulee or burnt ochre 50%, but other variations, other tones work well, just not pure white. So this way it gets really smooth. And then I will just take the white and go along the borders. And I think I will also just take the white and just go along the border of the lip to make it smoother, because it is not that harsh and I want to make it as real as possible. Just make it smooth here. And I will also want to work on the nose section, so I think I will switch to another luminance pencil. I will try this one. So this is called Burnt Sienna 10%, and I feel that the shadow is a little bit too strong. So I will try to make some sorts of lighter like areas here. So for example, this didn't work. Here at the tip the shadow is a little bit lighter. Then we have two almost contours around the nostrils. Like that. I will just indicate them carefully and lightly. And then we have darker areas directly beneath the nostrils. And I feel I need the olive green for that too. Okay, I think I will also add blue, just a little bit of blue here in the center of the nose, like that. You can also, of course, just take brown, but I really like to implement as much colors as I can. I just like the different like skin tones. Here at the borders of the nose, or like at the edges, you have a slightly darker shadow. All the pencils are rolling beneath my drawing board here. This is annoying. So we have those darker areas here at the edges. I will just carefully go over them with the... So this one is Caput Mortuum. This is a brownish reddish tone. It's very useful for skin tones, I feel, especially for the shadows. Just going here along the edges of the nose. Then I would like to add orange, but I'm not sure if I have orange. Okay, let's try. Okay, so this one is just cadmium, dark cadmium orange from Faber-Castell. And I will just go here along the borders of the nose. You see the nose now looks way more like three-dimensional, I feel, but I feel it's also very dark. So maybe I will just go over the nose with the Primrose. Let's see if that makes it a bit lighter. I think I will also try to make a little bit of a transition to the rest of the nose, because I feel this shadow is a little bit strong and it might look better when it's blended into a little bit into the rest of the nose. Maybe like that. And then I will go over it with the Primrose so that I don't have the grain. Now we can press a little bit more because we want to make this blending here between the lighter colors. And if you have lighter colors, because you don't see them that strongly, naturally we need to apply a little bit more pressure. So I think that definitely helped a bit. And I will use the same technique for the border here on the lower part of the shadow. And again, like white. So the technique to blend in like this very dark shadow into the surrounding is just to work on the border with something in between, like a midtone, and then you take the luminance pencil in white and then go over the border. So this way you get a blending, like an almost decent blending. And I feel like here I wanna, with the warm gray, I wanna also add the contour a little bit along the nose and work on that. And now I'm already very happy with how everything turned out. So now I will just jump in from like area to area and just correct little things before I continue with the hair and the watercolor. For example, here the area along the eye socket, I feel that needs to be a bit darker than here the eyelid. And here in this area it is darker. Then I feel I can maybe let the eyes pop out a bit more. So I will use this, how is this called? Light malachite green. It's a very intense turquoise. And maybe when I add a little bit of that in the irises, I think that looks very interesting. Like that. And I also need to work here on the borders of the face, because I didn't really add any jawline or chin line. The face just dissolved into the neck, and I feel it will probably look better when we add a contour here. So I think the eye area is okay. The nose area is almost perfect. I don't think I need to add a lot more. Maybe a soft contour where the nostril ends, maybe like that, and then I will go over it with the primrose and maybe even the white. Stop rolling under my drawing table. This is annoying. Stop that. Maybe I will just put the fabric here. Maybe that helps. Okay, so but the lips are not ready. So I will work with this very intense red tone from Luminance. It needs to be very sharp though. This is called Scarlet, number 70. And I will go along the edges of the lips. And just here again with the white. If you mix those luminance colors and you paint like with those different luminance colors on top of each other, they merge together because they are wax based, and you get really nice blendings and transitions. So I try to, when I try to get blendings, I really try to work with those luminance colors. I don't have that many, so oftentimes I just mix them with the polychromos colors. That works too. Here you see that I get a really nice blending. Okay, so I'm going to want to work on the shadow here. I think I will work with the, what is this? Burnt sienna. And I will just go here in the shadow area, but this is almost the same color as the red, and I want a contrast. And I also just realized that there is a dark shadow at the corners of the lower lip. So where the lip ends, we have this dark shadow. I'm just using the ultramarine blue for that. And then there is an area where it is a little bit lighter, and then the shadow begins again. So I'm not sure if I can depict that 100%, but I will try. So I just only paint in the darker, like the lower part of the shadow. And then I will make a little transition to the outline, like to the surrounding. And for that I'm just using the burnt ochre 50% luminance pencil. Go along the edge. Then I will take white and go along the edge again, like that. So for the inside of the lips, like, it's not that white here. Here it's rather a little bit darker. So I will try the medium flesh tone and see if this looks good. So this is, I think it's okay. For the next layer I will use dark flesh. How can that be dark? It looks kind of lighter and more intense, but anyway, so I'm just going over the same area, and then I will take light magenta. And you can also only use light magenta because this space here is rather cool, like almost purpley, and the flesh tones are more apricot toned. So this is the better color, I feel. Okay, where's my black? I think it's here. Okay, so I went over the gap between the mouth, so I'm just work that out again, just a little bit here and there, and maybe a little bit on the eyebrows, just indicate them here. So the model has very thin eyebrows. I think this is interesting because currently, like, thick eyebrows are modern, so having something different is nice for a change. It's something different. So I will just let them this thin. I think that looks beautiful. And just working with the white on top of the eyebrows again. And I think it looks very nice already. I think I will add a little bit of the luminance here on the right side of the lips so that the highlights here don't look so much different from the left side. Okay, I will just change the shape of the lip a tiny bit. And maybe the color too. I think I will use the violet. Especially here, the lips are relatively dark in the center. And I will use the black, just making it a bit darker. And what is this? This is magenta. I think we can also use a little bit of magenta. I feel especially the upper lip is very dark, particularly on the right side of the lip. So I'm just carefully adjusting the shape a bit. So going over the border with red again. And then with white. Like that. I feel we need a little bit of shadow here under the cheekbones. So I will just carefully use the olive green tone and add the shadow in those careful circular movements. I don't want the grain to be super strong. And on the right, I'll use a darker color. I think this is burnt sienna. And I'm just adding a similar shadow here. And here we have a shadow along the chin, but then between the chin and where the face ends, there is a little area that is lighter, so I'm not going over this area, just leaving that area with the watercolor. Here, like this area is lighter, so I'm just leaving that open, or how you would call that. Just continuing the shadow here along the face. So I'm just working on the contour right of the face with the ultramarine blue. And I think before I continue with the watercolors, again, because we still need to add hair, and maybe then in the end I might go over these areas again with color pencils. So before I do that, I will add the lashes. So I'm just using the black polychromos color pencil. And just add a couple of lashes here. And also on the lower eyelid, of course. Here I try to just draw them in those triangular shape. This looks the most natural, I feel. And maybe a little bit of black here at the eyebrows. Yeah, I think I will switch to watercolors and then probably go back to the face and add a couple more maybe corrections here and there. This one needs to be more, like there need to be more of a transition. Be like that. And like here the eyeshadow is not dark enough. Now let's continue with painting the hair. I am going to use a little bit more water now. So what I'm going to do is I will mix in just black, and I think maybe purple would fit. So I'm going to use violet as well. So let's try that out. Okay, so I will try to work without pressuring myself, because this is always a very scary part, just working around an area that you have finished, and it can be very scary. So here we have just a couple of hair strands. I'm trying to indicate this with my brush. Okay, and now I'm using just a wet brush and trying to make some interesting effects. So I feel those wet areas. And when I now take the hair color, it should bleed into those areas. This is so scary. I'm going to use a little bit of green. Okay, so I'm just adding a couple of hair strands here and there. And I think there's a lot of black now, so I will add a little bit of silver. This looks good, I think. So I want to add those little bit of those splashes, but not too much, just a couple of them. I think that looks good. Maybe I can add a bit of purple here. Oh, that's way too intense. And maybe a little bit of gold. This can never hurt. Gold is always beautiful. Yeah, and now I will let everything dry and maybe add a couple of more layers. I think I don't like how the forehead looks. Correcting the form here. Just adding some fly hair as well. Okay, so most of it is dried. I think this one area here is still wet, and I really like how it looks, but I feel that the darker areas make the face look even lighter. So I will add a light yellowish tint onto the face. And for that I think I can use yellow ochre. It's probably the best color for that. So I need to be a bit careful because this is very scary. So I will let the light areas, like the highlights, I will leave them white or just light, and just go over all the other areas on the face. I think I will make this darker too. And I will also add a little bit of red again into the cheek areas. And now I will let everything, or I will dry everything with the hairdryer. This is the fastest way. So, and what I want to do now is adding a little bit more depth to the face, and I'm just working on it with more color pencils. This is medium flash, and I will just go over all the mid-tone areas again, just to give like the whole face more depth, more three-dimensionality. And I will just enhance the contrast of these areas. It's always good to layer a lot of different color pencils on top of each other to get really nice different pigments and just a variety of skin tone. So here's like this magenta tone. This is like, I think it's, yeah, it's light magenta. I will continue with this is Venetian red. And I think we also need the olive green here. There's a lot of green in the face. Okay, what I'm doing now is I will use the ultramarine blue and just go over all the shadows here, because the blue makes a really nice contrast and difference to the warm brownish and yellowish tones of the face. So this is a really nice contrast. So I will just go over all the shadows here. And also here in the eye area. And it's important that the pencil is very sharp, even if you go over areas that are already dark, because if the pencil isn't sharp enough, you will always get this nasty grain and the texture of the paper, and yeah, we don't want that. At least not in this drawing, I think. Okay, so just going here over the eye section again, and I think I will also use this beautiful light magenta again, just carefully going over these areas. Okay, so I'm going to use the yellow. And maybe just making this section here a bit darker. I just want to make a transition between this cheek area and the shadow beneath. This is Venetian red. I think I will also work here on the area below the eyes. So I feel the light magenta really fits very well to the yellowish and brownish skin tones. So this is a good combination. I think if I also add a little bit of yellow, everything should get a little bit more vibrant too. So I'm just trying that out. It's always good to just try out what colors would fit to the face, just to your artwork. Just try different combinations out. I feel, especially when you draw skin tones, it's super, like it will probably always look good when you just play around a little bit with different colors. Like in the reference photo, like obviously we don't have all these colors, no magenta, no blue, but it, in my opinion, it just looks better. So now I'm going with the gray here, because here in this area around the mouth, I haven't added a lot of color pencils yet, so I don't want to get too colorful with colors. I oftentimes just add those extra colors in areas where I have already put down a lot of pigment. So we have this little shadow here around the in the corners of the mouth, and those very subtle mid-tone variations I only really add when I have added like more of the darker tones already. So I would never start with those very subtle shadows. But if I have worked on everything else and I feel that maybe I can just add a little bit more of those shadows, I do that. But it is very easy to mess up the drawing when you overdo those shadows and make them too extreme. For example, here around the eyes, we need to be very careful. For example, we have shadows here around the nose, but I will just not draw them because we don't need them there. It already looks good like that. And when we do those very subtle shadows, we can easily ruin the drawing. So I'm very careful when I draw with color pencils on top of my watercolor portraits. So I'm just adding more of those tiny subtle variations here and there. also adding the contour around the face. Maybe making the shadow here a little bit darker. This is Caput Mortem again, just in case you were wondering. I find this is a really helpful color for working with skin tones. I think I would just on the right side of the face just add a little bit more of that tone. Okay, so and what I'm going to do now is I will grab this one here, what was it, 50% ochre, and I will just go over all the areas that I just worked on, just to make everything a little bit more grain-free, a little bit more smooth. Just have to do it very careful. Yeah, and just work on a couple of areas. Maybe the nose is not completely even on both sides. Here I need to be careful. I don't want to, because I draw directly on the watercolor and there's no color pencil beneath. The grain will look a little bit stronger here. So I'm just using a polychromos pencil, because with that I can blend out the luminance pencils as well, because they are very hard and the luminance pencils are softer, and the softer a pencil is, the stronger the grain. So when I use the white, you can't see that, so you can't really see the grain, but when I use everything else, like any other color, you will see the grain even though it's luminance. So in here I'm just using the ivory, and I will just go over the complete color pencils area. You can't really see the ivory because the polychromos pencils are not really opaque, but what it does is it really seals the pigments, and it smoothen it out, like make it smoother. For the darker area, I don't want to use the same color because it makes it gray, so you should use maybe a darker one. Maybe this luminance color. This is burnt sienna. This is also, it's too light, so I don't want it to be so light. For the darker parts of the face, mostly I just leave them, because I can't really blend and blur them as well as the midtones. Okay, now I will take just a black fine liner. You can also use microns or whatever. I will just go over the lash area again. If you don't have that, no problem. You don't need to do this. Can't see it that strongly anyways. Yeah, it's completely invisible. Just forget that. It makes no difference whatsoever. I think I will just go over it with the color pencils, the polychromos pencil. You're just working on some of the edges. Yeah, I think this looks very beautiful. I like this study. I think it's finished. I don't think it needs more. We could add more hair, but I think it's really nice. I hope you like it. And yeah, show me your versions of this drawing, and I hope I see you in the next tutorial. Bye bye!